And I just want to welcome everybody, and those of you who are from Fort Hill, here in front of my garage, or close by, or home watching on a device. And welcome to any others who are tuning in on Zoom from around the state, or who knows, around the country and the world. Let us know in the chat where you are if you like. And feel free to comment and ask questions of the candidates, though they only have 10 or 15 minutes, so not many of the questions might reach them or be answered. Look for links to their websites to send comments or donations, which I sincerely hope you will do. In exactly one, I guess I didn't introduce myself. I'm Paul Epstein, and I organized this as a neighborhood event. I'm not affiliated with any party or any outside groups. So this is just what I decided to do to help the Democrats in West Virginia and in the 35th District House delegates here in West Virginia and the statewide candidates. So in exactly 1 month, votes will begin to be counted, and the process we're warned may take days or even weeks to determine who will be our next president. No one is expecting a big surprise here in West Virginia, but we have the opportunity to make a difference with our votes in every race for national and state offices. I don't know what the polling shows for our chances to oust Shelley Moore Capito, who said and done nothing to counter the attacks on healthcare, patriotic Americans, immigrants, racial and ethnic minorities, and even our democracy itself from our president, who, I will say, is in our thoughts and best wishes for his quick recovery. I don't know what Jim Justice's chances are, who many of us voted for with hopes he would actually prove true to his promises to work hard for working West Virginians. But I do believe that if we can put Ben Salango in the governor's mansion so at least someone will be there, and give him a blue state legislature with Sam Petsonk as Attorney General, Natalie Tenant as Secretary of State, and Claytor as Auditor, we can have a state that begins to do the hard work of recovering from this pandemic's horrendous economic and health impacts in a way that I hope and believe will not be dependent on propping up a dirty fossil fuel industry, but will encourage the growth of clean green jobs so that West Virginia can become the Colorado of the East, or perhaps Colorado can become the West Virginia of the West. So we're going to be hearing in this first hour from Cathy Kunkel, Sam Brown Petsonk, Natalie Tenant, Claytor, and in the second hour we'll hear from Andrew Robinson, our state Senate candidate in District 17 and House 35 for Democrats. Yes, those of you in the House District 35 can vote for all four: Kayla Young, Doug Skaff, Cathy, Ferguson, and Rusty Williams. But first, I'd like to ask everyone to observe a minute of silence for the over 200,000 Americans who have lost their lives in this pandemic, and for the loss of an American hero, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, whose last request was that her seat be filled by the next duly elected president of the United States, which I fervently hope to the heavens is Joe Biden. Thank you. I've asked Sam Brown Petsonk's father-in-law, retired Army Reserve Colonel Lou Tyree, who lives just a couple houses up the street, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll welcome Cathy Kunkel to the microphone.
Thank you, thank you. I'm going to flip this off for a second. And want you all to join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, in liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
And now that minute of silence that I said I was going to do and then promptly forgot.
Okay, great. I'm Cathy Kunkel. I'm running for Congress in the 2nd District. And I'm running because fundamentally we could be doing so much better here. And especially in the wake of this pandemic, we need to fight for an economy that works for all of us and not just a wealthy few. We live at a time when just 2 families in our country have more wealth than half of the population. And we know that our economy is working really well for people like Jeff Hoops, the coal CEO, who's trying to get millions of dollars for himself and his family out of his bankrupt coal company while trying to rob workers of the health care and pensions that they're owed. Our economy works really well for hedge fund managers and pharmaceutical executives. It doesn't work well for the mother I recently met, whose daughter has cancer and who spends hours every week fighting with insurance companies and forgoing her own medical needs to try to afford the medication that her daughter needs. Our economy doesn't work well for a woman I met making $11.87 an hour here in the job that she's held for the last 24 years. And the pandemic has just, taken our inequalities and made them even worse and shown a spotlight on a government in DC that just doesn't seem to care about its citizens. Our president has used this pandemic as an excuse to attack Social Security. And it's just unacceptable that so many West Virginians had to wait weeks or even months for any form of unemployment or small business assistance to arrive. We need leadership in DC that's actually listening to West Virginians and that will fight for what people demand, even when that means taking on powerful special interests. And for the last 6 years, where has Alex Mooney been? I've been in West Virginia. I've lived in West Virginia for the last decade. And I got very active in the community here in Charleston 6 years ago when the Freedom Industries chemical spill contaminated our drinking water. I co-founded a group called Advocates for a Safe Water System that fought for 3 years to win some improvements to keep chemicals out of our drinking water. I also co-founded a group called Rise Up West Virginia that advocates for health care for all and has helped win some legislative victories on expanding access to health care and capping insulin prices. And Rise Up also advocates for better services for folks struggling with addiction. Professionally, my background is in energy policy. I've worked as a consumer advocate, testifying to our Public Service Commission on behalf of consumer groups and fighting with our state's utility monopolies, Appalachian Power, Mom Power, as they've demanded hundreds of millions of dollars of corporate bailouts at our expense over the last several years. I've stood up for stronger energy efficiency programs and defended our state's rooftop solar laws that help consumers become energy independent. I didn't grow up in West Virginia. I grew up outside of Baltimore. Both of my parents spent their careers working for the Social Security Administration in Baltimore. They were both the type of people who brought their work home with them on the weekends. And from their example, I learned not only the meaning of public service, but also the real value of government programs like Social Security in making people's lives better. And when I moved to West Virginia a decade ago, too often I feel like I saw the opposite of that, of state agencies that were acting more to protect the profits of the coal industry than the public that they were supposed to be serving. And having worked primarily in energy in this state for the last decade, I decided to run for this seat because I've just been frustrated more and more by the lack of political leadership on energy and the economic transition that our state is undergoing. For the last decade here, we've been watching the coal industry collapsing financially.
Keep going.
Okay. We've been watching the coal industry collapsing financially and going from bankruptcy to bankruptcy. And each time the CEOs seem to walk away with more money while workers see their health care and pensions on the chopping block. We needed a plan a decade ago. And in the big picture, we've been a state that has had our wealth extracted for decades. For 150 years, West Virginia has seen billions of wealth extracted out of state by out-of-state corporations, and we've perpetually been one of the poorest states in the country. So, building back from this pandemic, we need to look at doing things differently. We need to build up the small businesses that actually keep wealth in our state. We need to bring in billions of dollars of investment in basic infrastructure that our state needs, in broadband, in safe drinking water, transportation, environmental reclamation to put our abandoned mine sites back to use. This pandemic, I think, obviously has really highlighted the need for broadband internet, but that was the biggest issue that I heard about on the campaign trail even before the pandemic. I met with a young woman in Randolph County who moved back to where she was from and is now trying to run a video production business in rural Randolph County, which is obviously a challenge because of the internet. And if you just think of that story multiplied 100 times, 1,000 times across this state, we know that lack of reliable internet is really holding us back in terms of economic development, and now also in terms of education and healthcare as well. The point is that there's billions of dollars of work to be done and thousands of good paying jobs in building the infrastructure that our state needs for the 21st century. Part of building a strong economic foundation for our state also means guaranteeing fundamental economic rights like healthcare for all, quality public education, and labor rights. This pandemic has taught us again the importance of labor rights so that workers can fight back against bosses trying to put people to work in unsafe conditions. We also can't talk about rebuilding our economy here in the 21st century without also mentioning climate change. Which we know is politically sensitive here, but let's be honest, we are seeing the impacts of climate change here all around us, from deadly flooding to extreme summer heat to losses to our small farmers. I met with one farmer who lost his crops 3 times in one season recently because of 3 50-year floods. So we know that this is happening, and we know that it's getting worse. And we also know here in West Virginia that the rest of the country owes us a debt for the coal and the gas that has powered this country for so long. You know, if you go to Williamson in Mingo County, you pass a sign that says, "Welcome to the heart of the billion-dollar coal fields." We all know the $1 billion is not in Mingo County anymore. Billions of dollars of wealth have left our state. And what if we just took some of the $15 billion that our federal government spends every year on subsidizing and lining the pockets of fossil fuel executives, and took just some of that money and reinvested it in workers and entrepreneurs and communities here in West Virginia? In the richest country in the world, we can tackle the climate crisis without leaving our communities behind. But we can't do any of the things I'm talking about without taking on powerful special interests in DC, in the fossil fuel industry, the health insurance industry, and others, which is why I'm not taking any corporate money in my campaign. And quite frankly, we don't need to look much further than Alex Mooney to see what kind of representation we get from a congressperson who gets 90% of their campaign funds from out-of-state interests and from corporate PACs. Alex Mooney doesn't even come here to find out what our interests are, much less advocate for them in Congress. He's voted multiple times to repeal the Affordable Care Act. He voted earlier this year against free coronavirus testing and against expanding paid sick days during the pandemic. So if you or anyone in your family has taken advantage of a COVID test in the last 6 months, don't thank Congressman Mooney. So I'm here today to ask for your vote, and if you support this campaign, to also ask for your help. We're literally a month from the election. It's October 3rd. Of course, people are voting already. Our campaign has already written, our volunteers have written close to 80,000 postcards that have been mailed to voters, and we're now aiming to make 100,000 phone calls and texts by Election Day. We've already made over 20,000. So if you'd like to go to kunkelforcongress.com, you can sign up to help with that. If you're able, please make a donation as well. You know, this all obviously costs money, and although we're not taking corporate money, we will gladly accept your money. So, and I'm not sure how much more time I have, but I'd be happy to turn it over to all of you for questions for however much time remains.
Time for questions?
Yeah, however much we have.
Can we see the chat? Does anybody have a question for Cathy?
I'm curious as to whether you saw and want to respond to the pandering article in today's newspaper.
So I have actually not yet had a chance to read the op-ed from Congressman Mooney this morning. We had an op-ed last week, so I suspect he was probably at least indirectly responding to that. I believe the Gazette's policy is 1 op-ed per candidate in the election season, so I'm not sure that we actually have an opportunity to respond, but if any of you would like to, feel free.
All right, we're ready for Sam next.
All right, so I guess next up is Sam Petsonk. So thank you all.
Hey, everybody. I thank you all for participating in this. You know, seems like everything we do requires a little bit of innovation right now. And I think this is a great gathering. So I can't see everyone who's here with us today, but I know Fort Hill, and I know that you're out there, you're good people, and maybe there's a way for me to take questions from the group, and I would love to do that. But you know, I'll start off just by reminding people I am a 9th generation West Virginian. I worked for our Senator Robert C. Byrd the last several years that he was in the U.S. Senate. I think many of you know I have been involved as a a public legal services lawyer representing hundreds of coal miners across West Virginia. We've recovered millions of dollars in wages and health care and, for retirees and active workers across West Virginia, mostly coal miners, but also other factory workers and bank tellers and all sorts of people that need representation around our state. And I deal with the medical community all the time in my law practice, the health clinics, the hospitals, the rural health clinics, the black lung clinics, and the healthcare providers that I work with every day came to me last winter and said, you ought to take a look at this race. Our Attorney General, Patrick Morrisey, has filed a lawsuit without authority, without the approval of the people of West Virginia. And he is using his office and his lawsuit right now to try taking away health care from 1 out of 10 West Virginians. And I'd be glad to answer questions about this because the magnitude of the damage that Morrisey will do to our economy and our public health in West Virginia, if he succeeds, if he wins his race and he wins his lawsuit, it's gargantuan. Think about this: 1 in 10 West Virginians have a state health card today, and they would lose it if Morrisey succeeds in court in front of the United States Supreme Court. And make no mistake about it, his lawsuit is set to be heard for oral argument on the Monday following the election. So this is a clear and a present danger that Morrisey succeeds in taking away health care. And what will happen if he does? We will kick these people, hundreds of thousands of West Virginians, well north of 200,000 West Virginians right now, kick them back out onto the private health insurance market, where we know people have to choose between food and health insurance, between sending their children to college and giving their children health insurance. I mean, the choices that Morrisey will make us face are horrendous. And furthermore, we can't afford it. I mean, there's no possible way that we can afford to have 4 more years of Patrick Morrisey. You're talking thousands of high quality healthcare jobs down the tubes. I watched this law come into existence. I worked for Senator Byrd when our federal healthcare reform was enacted. I helped to write large measures of that bill, certainly the parts that affect West Virginia, the major reforms of the federal Black Lung Benefits Program, the reforms to the private health insurance marketplace. Morrisey has attacked the affordability of healthcare. He knew that the healthcare law was making healthcare more affordable for hundreds of thousands of people. So our state government over the last 3 or 4 years has attacked the affordability, has actually affirmatively decided to make healthcare less affordable in West Virginia. And you've seen that in the last couple of years, the last 4 years, in fact, we have lost half of the private health insurance plans in West Virginia. Fully half of the people who had private individual health insurance coverage 4 years ago in West Virginia do not have it today. And it's because of bad decision making, forfeiting important federal subsidies. Morrisey has made grievous mistakes, mismanaging the healthcare business, and now he's outright attacking the health insurance that we do have. So there are a lot of important issues in my race. The Attorney General's office touches virtually every aspect of state government. I'm glad to address the overdose crisis. It's a major concern. We're losing thousands of people to overdoses and death from opioid addiction and illegal drug addiction and substance use disorder in West Virginia. We've got to litigate more aggressively against the responsible companies. We also have to save these federal health care dollars, which are the backbone of the addiction treatment system in West Virginia. Morrisey is attacking the single greatest financial resource that we have for fighting substance use disorder. 50,000 West Virginians receive addiction treatment and recovery services because of and through the federal health care programs that Morrisey would eliminate if he wins his lawsuit, which is now pending in the United States Supreme Court. How do we beat our way through the addiction crisis if we lose that resource? We don't. We fail. It means more people are uninsured, or they spend their life savings trying to buy insurance and line the pockets of the big insurance companies, which is obviously good for Morrisey's buddies, his old clients in the pharmaceutical business, I mean to say, but it's horrible for our state's economy. It's horrible for the people who are trying to make it through addiction and recovery, which is a major challenge in our state. And, third, as to addiction and substance use disorder, the Attorney General has real tools at his disposal to promote access to vocational rehabilitation, getting people back into the workforce, back with their families. We know that to succeed with long-term recovery, people need to beat the stigma. They need affordable treatment and recovery services. And Morrissey, through his Civil Rights Division, has the tools to promote access to vocational rehabilitation, to on-the-job accommodations, to public housing for people who are clean, who are drug-free, and who are trying to get right with long-term recovery. Morrissey has, unilaterally disarmed himself from all of those tools and all of those duties that he carries to protect people who are struggling with long-term recovery. In fact, Morrissey's let the entire Civil Rights Division die on the vine while he's been in office, and our people are suffering and dying and losing an immense amount as a result. So I can talk about education, I can talk about workforce development, I can talk about broadband and infrastructure. The Attorney General touches all of those matters: land use planning and infrastructure and economic growth. But I don't want to go on and on and on. I've hit some of the most important issues on the table. And of course, far and away the biggest issue in my race is that Morrissey is trying to take away health insurance for 1 out of 10 West Virginians. Our hospitals can't afford that. Our doctors can't afford that. Our patients surely can't afford that. Our children can't afford it. It's going to handicap, our economy and our public health at a time when we're in the biggest economic and public health crisis of our lifetimes, heck, of our generations. So I hope that opens up some questions. I really always enjoy question and answer. If this format is conducive to questions and answers, I'd love to do it.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
The question is, when elected, what are the first couple of things you will do when in office?
So first of all, and I say this with great circumspection, I suppose. But I will remove West Virginia from the lawsuit to take away health care that Morrissey has filed. We have to do that. Morrissey never had a mandate or really the approval of the governor or anyone else in West Virginia to get our state into that lawsuit. And I say that I'm circumspect about it because I do not believe it's the job of the Attorney General to file an endless barrage of purely political lawsuits, based on his personal political predilections and whims. That's wrong. So, I don't take it lightly to say I'm going to withdraw West Virginia from that lawsuit. I think my election will demonstrate there was never a mandate to be in this lawsuit to begin with, and we have to get out of it. So that's item number one. And then, but beyond that, I will be aggressive with protecting our community schools. I've litigated with the state to, ensure the stewardship of our constitutional mandate for a thorough, efficient, adequate, equitable, and free public education system. So I'm going to keep a close eye on the School Building Authority and the education, agencies. That is not a litigation objective, but it's a real, the Attorney General has two general duties. One, to litigate to protect the public interest, but two, to serve as counsel to the agencies of the state. And we have really, especially during COVID, think of all the children with special needs, special education needs in the public school system. I mean, the Attorney General has really distinct and significant legal duties. The state carries those duties to children. And I've got to take a close look at our performance during COVID, especially. Equitable access to broadband, enrichment services, special needs, and so forth. That's on my mind, and I'd say that might be job number two as we get going with governing. But of course, after that, there's so much. I mean, the healthcare system requires active management. Morrissey has forfeited millions of dollars in federal tax credits that would make private health insurance cheap or free for most people in the private individual health insurance marketplace. I will push for the correction of that very wrong policy position lickety split. It's too late to do it for 2021, sadly, but we can do it for 2022. And so I'm going to begin moving immediately to make healthcare affordable like it can and should be under our federal healthcare law. If God willing, you know, we still have that federal law to make healthcare affordable for us. Number one, saving us from losing all of our healthcare. Number two, working immediately on addressing present needs and long-term commitments in public education system. Number three, you know, beginning to govern our healthcare marketplace the way that it is intended and really has to be, to protect our hospitals, protect our doctors, protect our patients, you know, and make healthcare affordable again. It's very doable if we simply choose to do it. So top three, you know, look, we have to enforce all of these statutory mechanisms that are there under the Attorney General's office for enforcement. That's consumer protection, antitrust, protecting our small businesses, you know, civil rights enforcement, wage and hour enforcement. I'll be doing all of those things. We have a good, strong inspectorate, you know, a staff of investigators. We still have that. Of course, we have great lawyers in the consumer office and the antitrust division. And I'd venture to guess maybe some of them are in the audience there today, but I don't know. But we got to use that division and give them the mandate to do what they know how to do so very well. There's a lot to say, but I'd be eager to hear other questions. Or perhaps I've run through my time. I don't want to take up more than my fair share here. Well, I'll certainly say what Cathy said and remind everyone, these races are expensive. We are spending an immense amount of money. We're going to be able to win my race. I am running neck and neck with Patrick Morrissey. I believe that I will be able to beat him, but it will be very close. If you share my ad, many of you may sign up on my website. If you're not already signed up, it's samforwv.com, samforwv.com. And you can give there if you are in a position to give financially to support the race. We are spending a massive sum of money to ensure that we get out the vote and that we connect with voters and that we build the biggest margin of victory. Because when we win my race, we're going to send a message to the country that West Virginians are going to stand up and fight to defend our healthcare and defend our economy. People know that about us. That's what we always do in West Virginia on energy, on healthcare, and my race is no different. I'm confident and I'm very optimistic we will come out victorious in this race. But let's build a big margin for victory. And your support, if you sign up and share our news and give to this campaign, you'll make a big difference. You'll save our economy here in West Virginia. You'll help hundreds of thousands of patients, and you'll send a message to the country. We've got to save this healthcare system, not just for West Virginia, you know, but for everyone. So I hope we'll stay in touch. Send me a message, and I really I'm on Fort Hill all the time. I'll be up there probably later this week and visiting my in-laws, my mother and father-in-law here who are probably out there, Lou and Belinda. And I know many of you. I hope to see you soon. I've been in Fairmont, Morgantown, and Wheeling so far today. So we are leaving no stone unturned in this race. And I'm sorry I couldn't be with you in person, but thank you and stay safe.
I'm going to start talking, because my background in broadcasting does not allow me to have silence and dead air, as they would call it. So I'm going to start talking. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Natalie Tenant, and I'm running for Secretary of State in the state of West Virginia. Yeah! Yeah! A lot of people want to say, oh, Natalie's running to take it back. No, I'm not running to take it back. I'm ready to take it forward. This guy in office now, he's taken it back 20 or 30 years. I'm running to take this office forward. We were on a good momentum and just got tripped up a little bit. And I'm running for Secretary of State because, just like you, I want a West Virginia that welcomes businesses, welcomes diversity, respects workers, and embraces innovation. And I know that we can do this. I know that we can do this with our West Virginia spirit and the pride that we have in ourselves and the pride that we have in our state. I was Secretary of State for 8 years, and I was known as an innovator. We streamlined, we modernized the office, we saved businesses time and money, and we saved the people of West Virginia money and gave back millions of dollars. So I know that we can do this when we all work together. And I'm proud of my record. And I'm proud to be able to have the opportunity, if elected again, to move forward and continue on that. But I'll tell you what I'm most proud of. I am most proud of the way that we treated people, whether it was the customer, whether it was our colleagues, many of you who are here today, or the way we treated our coworkers and our workers. And that's what this race has come down to. It's come down to dignity and decency. First day on the job, my opponent illegally fired 16 people. We've been working with him. My team and his team have been working to have a smooth transition. Then they came to us and said they were firing people. They were firing people like Lena. Lena was just 2 weeks shy of 20 years of service to the state of West Virginia. And you all know what that means when you hit the 20-year mark. And Lena had worked herself all the way up. She became a national expert in elections because she was our elections director. And so on that day, she was gone. She was gone without thought, without cause, without ever even being interviewed by Mac Warner himself. He didn't interview her. He didn't look at her resume. He didn't look at her personnel file. And he fired her and 15 others that day. And it cost the state $4 million, the largest payout in state history. So you want to talk about decency and dignity? That's what we're talking about in this race, because it does matter how you treat people, because it translates into the policies that you put in place also. And that's why I'm running, because I know that we can have a good Secretary of State's office. I want to see us continue on the initiatives that I had. And this is what we'll do. This is the next that we'll do. This is what the future looks like if Natalie is back, if I'm back into the Secretary of State's office. We are going to make it easier for businesses. I worked so hard to streamline the office that we would be able to use online services, and businesses did. We went from 11% uses of online services to about 90%. And in that time, we brought efficiency, and I was able to remove a transaction fee. Will he put it back on? I'm gonna take it off. I'm gonna make sure that we complete the process of a true online, electronic, web-based business portal for our businesses. I worked with Republicans and Democrats to make that happen, to pull 4 agencies together to make it easier for businesses to go online. Well, it still says coming soon. The blueprint, the design that we did is still there. He just didn't act on it. He's spending misappropriated funds by having a building instead of having online services. So we're going to fix that. You know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to implement automatic voter registration. Sounds like, I'm telling you, it's been on the books for 4 years, folks. I worked with Republicans and Democrats to have it passed, and it hasn't been implemented. He keeps asking for delays and blaming it on the legislature. And here's the thing, you know, I want to look forward, like what's the next step for election advances or election reforms? We shouldn't even be talking about automated voter registration. It should have been in place 3 years ago, and folks should be using it now. Just like we use online voter registration. Yeah, we don't talk about that, do we? That's been in place for 5 years. We should be looking forward, and we should be exploring things like ranked choice voting. We should be exploring risk limiting audits. Those are the next steps for me. That's the future for me. I'm not looking at the past. I'm not taking it backward. We've got to move forward on this. So those are some of the plans that I have in place. Know that decency and dignity does surround it all, because when you start working on policy and you think about how it's going to impact people, that's how it will impact you if I'm Secretary of State. You will be respected. Your dignity and decency will come first. And I know that we can do this, West Virginia. I will be brave once again so West Virginia can be bold, because I believe in you and I believe in us. And it's going to take vision, cooperation, and courage, but I know that we can do this. And I'm asking for your vote. Thank you for being part of this special, unique opportunity for all of us to be in person and to be online. I even went live real quick just so folks could see this. This is how we campaign now in 2020 in the middle of a COVID crisis. But when you have people who are so enthusiastic about West Virginia, about this race, and about the ideas that we have to offer, you see why you'll see why you can believe in West Virginia too. So I'm Natalie Tenant, running for Secretary of State, and I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you all. Now, who has questions?
Natalie, do you ever envision being able to do sort of like Wisconsin, is it Washington or whoever's doing everybody's voting and it's an automatic voting?
You're talking about vote by mail, aren't you? Kate's asking me, do I ever envision our being a state like, the first one that we look at is Oregon, and then Washington came along, then Colorado, Utah, and Hawaii do true vote by mail. They also have voting in person because you have to have voting in person, even with a system like that. And so I know that that's possible. And you know what we did? Back in 2009, we passed legislation that would do a pilot project for vote by mail. And it happened in the city of Morgantown in 2011. And so we know it can be a success, true vote by mail. And we do have vote by mail for early voting for the town of Harrisville in Ritchie County. So when you look at this and you ask that question, there's so much that we're going to be focused on come February when the legislative session starts, because there have been a lot of the code that has been altered and changed because of emergency rules in state of emergency, that it is important to have the legislature make sure we look at that again so it doesn't become commonplace when it was never intended by the legislature. Or if we want to continue it, they codify it and put it into state law. So that's what we have to look at. I think that that will be one that will be looked at. There was a legislation that was introduced in 2020 that didn't go anywhere that asked for vote by mail. Certainly we'll also explore no excuse absentee vote by mail. Yeah, it's kind of what we're all doing now. We don't have an excuse. We're using COVID as an excuse, but that's the next step that we'll look at. And another thing that I think that we're going to need to change, no matter where I go around the state. Sam's been all over the place. I can't even tell you where I've been the last couple of days. I've been to Elkins, Buchanan, somewhere, Parkersburg, Ripley, all around. Folks want drop boxes. They're so simple. Drop boxes for your ballots that you want to return now. So some people are still walking in and dropping them off. This current secretary said no, we can't have them, but because it's not specifically in code. Well, we're changing code a lot anyway because of state of emergency and emergency rules, that you could certainly look at that and allow the county clerks and have what they're asking for, and especially the voters, and give them what they're asking for. So you have to have a vision and you have to have an open mind, and you just have to be a leader in this situation. Anybody else? Paul, do you want me to introduce? Sure, I said I would yield some of my time. As we go around the state, we see fellow candidates. Now, Marianne Claytor is on the docket. She will be coming up, but I told Bob Beach, who is running for State Agriculture Commissioner, that I would yield some of his time. I'm worried I might have used all my time, I don't know. So it's Senator Bob Beach from Monongalia County, who was instrumental in much of the work during the teacher strike. So he's probably not going to mention that part, but I will. So Senator, if you want to come up and talk about what some of your ideas for Agriculture Commissioner is, this is Senator Bob Beach.
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you, Paul, and thank you to the community for coming out today. I am Senator Bob Beach. I'm your candidate for Commissioner of Agriculture here in the state of West Virginia. I am a lifelong resident. Let's get that out of the way. I am a lifelong resident of West Virginia. I've lived in Monongalia County my entire life, was raised on a large cattle farm there in Monongalia County, north of town, a little place called Fort Martin. My dad taught ag sciences at a local high school in the area for 35 years. So agriculture and what it means to each and every one of us was instilled in us in a very, very young age, and continues to this day with my children. Thank you, Paul. You know, like I said, my father was taught agriculture and I was on the farm. I left college, or left the home. I decided I wanted to go into the workforce before I went to college. That came much later. I actually went into retail, became a meat merchandiser. You know that as a meat cutter. If you're in a grocery store, that's what I did. Did that for 24 years, worked my way up to the ranks, became manager, supervisor. And before I left, I was in the, I was purchasing. I did the meat commodities buying for 4 stores in a regional area in the Pennsylvania area. Fast forward a little bit more, college is out of the way. I'm now in the legislature. I went into the legislature in 2001, actually elected in 2000. When you're in the legislature, you're allowed to request the committees you're on. Well, right off the bat, there's only 2 committees I really wanted to be on. They put you on others. I wanted to be on education and the other agriculture. And then soon after that, I was appointed as chairman to that committee. Fast forward another 10 years, I go into the Senate, and that's where I am right now. And again, I'm on education and agriculture. So it means very, very much to me. And we have a lot of plans going into this. That was one of the things my opponent did that kind of has irked us all along, was the fact that he promised us a game plan for the 4 years he's been there. Well, he hasn't provided that. He claims that there's one on file someplace, but just in a recent interview with a reporter here in the state of West Virginia, that reporter went looking for it and could not find it. So you know how reporters are. They're pretty tenacious, and they'll find something if they're looking for it. And so he's still looking for the master plan or strategic plan. There's a lot of things that, let me back up just a little bit and how I got into this. Farmers from both Mason and Greenbrier County asked me to sit down with them and let's talk for a while. So we met 18 months ago in Greenbrier County. And the purpose, I was pretty much just going to leave it open. I just allowed them to vent. And one of the complaints I heard from the farmers in the room that evening was the lack of communication between the Department of Agriculture and the farming community and the agribusiness community. And that was obviously the number one thing we needed to address going forward from that point. But then we got into it a little bit more, and we're finding that we've lost 50% of our dairy farms here in the state of West Virginia. We've lost 722 small farms. This has all been in the last 4 to 5 years. We've gone from 48th or 47th in gross receipts in agriculture. We're now at, we're in 37th, and now we're down to 43. So everything is just falling apart. Things are sliding off the charts, so to speak. We want to go back in and work on it. We do have a plan to bring dairy farmers back to the state with a tax credit. We have problems in hemp. We already have a plan in place to fix hemp. I'll get into that in a minute. Number one question I get around the state, especially from teachers, is how can we get greenhouses into school? Well, legislators are famous for finding the path of least resistance. And for us is to craft a piece of legislation that basically puts that authority with the school building authority. And every time we build a new school, we add a greenhouse. Anytime we rebuild or remodel, we add a new greenhouse to that project as well. So little pieces of the pie we're putting together. That information is all available online at beach4wv.com. But I want to talk about hemp for a moment, because right now that's what a lot of conversations about. Unfortunately, here in the state of West Virginia, the legislature and the Department of Agriculture did a poor job of putting this together. The current commissioner likes to brag that there's 600 new applications for license this year. Well, folks, ask yourself, if any business person you've ever met, what model do they use where they judge how many applications are processed? Everything's determined as outcomes. Whether you're a coal miner or a coal operator, it's based on how many tons of coal. If you're a grocer and there's 10 cans of beans on the shelf, you're looking at how many sold, not how many you put on the shelf. Well, he's focused on that. Here in the state of West Virginia, we're failing in regards to the output of hemp and CBD oils and anything that's associated with the hemp industry. We need to get focused on the other end, not on the front end. He likes to take credit for the fact that there's so many new licenses being released. Well, that didn't happen until the feds decided we're going to make this a legal product to be moved across state borders. Now, there's one person standing for you right now that made the action or took the aggressive action to make sure we had interstate commerce of hemp, and that's myself. Myself working with the legislature, we crafted a white paper, went to the Senate, we passed it. I took that white paper to St. Louis 2 years ago, to the Southern Legislative Conference, which is made up of 13 states across the South, with the idea is we need to get Congress to craft a piece of legislation to legalize hemp across state lines. We passed it unanimous there in St. Louis. But what happened before I even got home, Congress had already had that white paper and they were already working it in to the Farm Bill. So by the time December comes around that year, they had already adopted it in the Farm Bill itself. So again, a lot going on right now in agriculture. We have some plans that we want to grow agriculture. We want to fix the dairy farms. We want to put those greenhouses in play and obviously take advantage of hemp here in the state of West Virginia. A lot of opportunities there. A lot of our farmers out there, we need an education component in that as well. A lot of farmers are just focused on the top 10 to 12 inches of that plant for the CBD oils, but everything underneath that is fiber content. And that's textiles, that's hemp plastics, hemp concrete, 20,000 other products we can manufacture by using the fiber. But again, I'm Bob Beach, candidate for Commissioner of Agriculture. And if there's any questions out here or on here in front of me on Zoom, I'd be glad to answer them. If not, I'll get out of the way and we'll make room my good friend Mary Ann Claytor.
I'll adjust it if needed.
Yeah, I'm not as
As tall as
I'm
that.
not as tall as Paul. I got my mother's genes. My father was tall, but my mother was, we won't want to say short, average. But my name is Mary Ann Claytor, and I'm running for West Virginia State Auditor. And we live in a world of alternative facts. And we have people that would like, campaigns that would like to skew the duties of certain offices to more meet their qualifications. My opponent is a lawyer with a political communications degree. I am an auditor. I am the only one that actually has an accounting degree and over 22 years experience as being a real auditor, worked for the West Virginia State Auditor's Office, and over 30 years of governmental accounting experience. We have been led to believe that we have to accept less just because that's the way it's been going on. But I believe that as West Virginians, we deserve the best that is offered out there so that we're not complaining about, oh, this is the only choices that we have. Well, we have two distinct differences in the two candidates for West Virginia State Auditor. The West Virginia State Auditor is the official bookkeeper for West Virginia and also the supervisor of public offices. And in that role, in the supervisor of public offices is where the relationship with local governments comes in. We're responsible for audits of the local governments, responsible for approving their budgets, responsible for training of local governments. At the state level, we're responsible for the audit of expenditures so that when we pay out the expenditures, they are in compliance with the laws and regulations of the state of West Virginia. Well, I'm the only person who really has experience in ensuring that expenditures are in compliance with the laws and regulations of West Virginia. Because when you go to school, there are certain classes that we have to take, which is business law, that deals with those type of aspects. And I did it as an auditor. Well, the things that we're lacking now is that we need to increase the customer service aspect of the auditor's office, because I'm more proactive and my opponent's more reactive. He's concentrating on after things happen, and I want to just go head on and work on things that I have seen over the years that we need to be more proactive about. We need to be proactive about getting audits done in a timely manner. There was a little bit of a problem with the former auditor that had been there for a little while with the municipalities being audited in a timely manner. But now the counties are even in trouble. If you look at the 2016, in March of 2016, when the former auditor left, the 2014 fiscal year audits were about 11% behind. Whereas when you look at the current auditor as of March 31st, 2020, it's 45% behind. So that's a great difference. And I am the person that's going to be able to get that caught up and make sure that we are having quality audits, because I'm always afraid of politicians that want to keep campaign promises and the quality goes down. I won't allow that to happen. Even if I'm not able to achieve this task, I will not lie to anybody and say that I did achieve the task. And we're going to have it on our website, because I had to go through and search and hunt and calculate to get this information. I'm the type of leader that believes that you have to be accountable for the things that you are responsible for and be transparent about the things that you are responsible for before you start pushing things on other people. Because what we've been having is they've had a big push on transparency of local governments, but as far as transparency, it is only as good as the underlying information. So if the accounting records are not in great shape, then you're still not getting the information that you need to see, because it's just not all recorded. So you're not seeing it.
Also, I'm not a person that is an advocate of extracting data from one system and dumping it into another system, because in that transition, you can manipulate data and no one would know that it had been manipulated. So I like us to be able to use the original system. So a difference that I would have done was, number one, hold us responsible for a product that we spent hundreds of millions of dollars on, the West Virginia OASIS system, make sure that it will do what we paid, we as citizens, because it's our money. And we need somebody that's going to be in there fighting to protect our money, and someone that can withstand political pressure. I've done it for my 22 years because, believe it or not, I audited Republicans and Democrats. I didn't just, I didn't even know who was a Republican or a Democrat, honestly, because that's not something that you make a judgment on. You do your job and you do it the right way. And I was always working for the citizens of West Virginia, and they depended on me because I was their eyes for the situations that were going on in local governments. So that's one of the things that is really important, because we don't want audits to get behind, because then that gives someone the opportunity to take the whole kitchen instead of just a few knobs. Because he's really has this idea that if we make sure the prosecutors, he invested money into our fraud section that Mr. Gaynor had started in 2010, because he was more concerned about being able to say, we have arrested and this many people have went to jail. But in most of these cases, the audits were really far behind. So they were able to take more money than would have been taken if someone had gotten in there to do the audit, in a quicker. So I just want to be more proactive so we can protect our money, so that we can do the job that we're responsible to do. When I started looking at the numbers, like Chief Inspector Division is responsible for the audits of the local governments. And we also have outside accounting firms. Well, we are responsible to make sure that all audits are done in a timely manner. Well, under his administration, the percentage of about 42, it went down 42%. Audits that were conducted by the Chief Inspector Division went up about 23%. Audits performed by outside accounting firms. So I know they have a big push a lot of times for privatization, but there appears to be a management problem of the people, the auditors that you're in charge of. And I will make sure that we don't, that everything is managed properly, that things are being done on time, and that we're proactive. Also, local governments were used to in the past of our giving them guidance on accounting information, like new standards that came out, laws and regulations that come out that affect their accounting needs. So we were proactive. We didn't wait until someone asked the question about something new that came down the line. We were proactive, and we went ahead and gave that guidance, because we need consistency. Did you all believe we need consistency in government? Don't you all believe we need integrity in the financial numbers that are coming out? And that's one thing everybody will be able to know about Marianne Claytor, is that I work for the citizens of West Virginia. I don't work for any particular party. And I won't be working on trying to get elected or to another office. I will be working on doing the best job that I can do and that my staff can do. Over my first 4 years, I plan on visiting every entity that we audit and personally assessing their accounting needs. That's something that that the current auditor can't do, because he doesn't know enough accounting information to do that. So that is something I want to do. We have the right qualified person running this time. Well, I ran in 2016 also. And I believe the reason that I didn't win is because people didn't know that I even existed. And that does have to do with money. And I know a lot of times we don't like to hear about it. It's not a sexy position. People don't tend to like to donate. Although I have to say I've had a lot of energy in very small donations. I have people that often give me $10 at a time. And I'm very proud to be able to use those funds. And mainly what I use them for is advertising, because I don't have paid staff. I told people up front, if you expect to be paid, then this is probably not the campaign to get on with. So we have, volunteers, because I believe we have to use our money efficiently. And I'm doing that by you looking at my campaign, that I use the funds that people give me efficiently. And all my travel costs, except for the bus that I recently rented, have been, out of my personal funds. So I believe that West Virginia deserves better. Do you all believe West Virginia deserves better? Yes. Are you ready for West Virginia to get the best candidates elected to office? Yes. That means we have to talk to our family and friends. That means we have to come out of our pockets sometimes. And we have to come out of our comfort zones, because that's how things have gotten into the terrible shape that they have been in. It's because we have set back and we have allowed people just to do things, and we weren't awake, as the young people say nowadays. But we are now awake. We are now active. We are now pushing to make sure the best candidates get elected to office. And I will appreciate your vote. I will appreciate your help in any way that you can, getting on your phones and talking to your families and friends when you're checking in on them during this COVID time. So if you have any questions, if you can remember Claytor for Auditor, I would greatly appreciate it. And we will make accounting great again. All right. Okay. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, can you do my taxes for me?
People, I get calls about that all the time, and it's really not a function of the auditor's office. Even when I worked there, they would ask, tax questions. It's not a function of the auditor's office, but I can put you, I can personally do them, but that's
Thank you, Mary Ann Claytor. Thank you for coming. I just want to I built in a little bit of time into the schedule, which I'm not going to fully use. We had Bob Beach a little extra. Actually, it turns out we had a little balanced time. So we're right on schedule, which is the most surprising thing so far about today. And now I've also been surprised how well the technology has worked, because last night we tried to test it out. This morning we tried to test it out. It was a total disaster, and somehow it's working so far. Knock on anything you can. But my name is Paul Epstein. For those who hadn't signed in, we're in front of my garage, and we have. Let's see. I'll show you around for those of you online. So there's one of the garage doors full of signs of the candidates, and here are our guests. Right. Make some noise.
Hey. Andrew, you're good to go.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Epstein. I really appreciate you putting this on for us. As you were saying, this is a new way to do campaigns and do meet and greets. And I'm coming to you live from a remote location as we're out here knocking doors and dropping door hangers and campaigning. We just pulled over on the side of the road and put up the cell phone here. So with that, I'm Andrew Robinson. I'm running to be the senator in the 17th district. We've been fortunate to have Corey Palumbo represent us in that position for many years, and Corey's calling it quits, so I'm going to try to step into his shoes. The last 4 years, I've been able to represent the 36th district, kind of the other half of the county, in the House of Delegates. I've prided myself in being one of those individuals that's willing to fight for real West Virginians, to dig in on issues and actually do the work, because I really enjoy the legislative work and being in the building and working with people outside of legislative session, and not just talking about issues, not just advertising that, we're tackling the drug epidemic, but actually digging in. And last year I spent many hours and many days having one-on-one meetings with people that are involved in rehabilitation and treatment and substance abuse issues, and digging into those issues. And I've prided myself on being one of those individuals that somebody could call 24 hours a day, any time of year, and ask me if I could help with an issue. When I started in the legislature, I picked 2 issues to focus on and have stuck to those 2 issues. One being the drug epidemic, not because I'm a doctor, not because I have any interest in the field, but because I've had so many friends pass away and have to go visit their parents and talk to them about that substance issue that we've still just let go by. And the other issue that I focused on is workforce education. I really feel that West Virginia's economy could grow, and the best way to make it grow is to educate our workforce, put a skill in every one of our citizens' hands. When you graduate high school, you should be able to have the basic knowledge to go out and be a contributing member of society. But what if we gave a skill or a trade to every one of those individuals' hands? What if we had more electricians, more heating and cooling, more plumbers, more graphic designers, more coders in West Virginia? I think all those things are something that we can put into our children's hands and train them for the future. That's why I want to get in the state Senate and work on these issues and dig in deeper on issues rather than just talk about them in a campaign year. Actually get in and get something done and move West Virginia forward. And with that, I'm Andrew Robinson running for state Senate, and I hope you all will support me and I can achieve the pride, the honor of having your votes. So thank you, Mr. Epstein, for putting this on, and thank you all for being there and taking a look or having the time to hear what I have to say. While he works on that, I will give you all my cell number, 304-545-7378. So feel free to call me anytime. If you have any questions or if I can help out on anything, feel free just to ring me up, and we'll try to help as best and as soon as we can. Thank you all.
All right. I am to announce that Rusty, you are next.
Got moved up in the batting order, I see. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks, Paul, for putting this on. You know, as most of the candidates have already said, campaigning under these circumstances has been difficult. So I truly appreciate the opportunity to get on and talk a little bit about this campaign. This is not something that I ever set out to do. Running for office wasn't something that I thought I would do. I was perfectly happy with my life. I'm educated in computer-aided drafting and design, as well as audio and video production and engineering. And I was pretty fortunate. I got to spend my days creating art and music, doing things that I absolutely loved. And then I woke up on Mother's Day in 2012 and everything changed. I ended up diagnosed with late-stage testicular cancer, and I didn't have insurance at the time. I was working with some folks trying to start up a small business. And, you know, when you don't have insurance and you're diagnosed with cancer, things change pretty quickly. They told me I needed emergency surgery, but without the resources to pay for it, it was a pretty hopeless situation. I spent about 5.5 weeks trying to get coverage, was denied multiple times, and, finally had to call in a family meeting and have the most difficult conversation I've ever had in my life. You know, I had to sit down and explain to my loved ones that because of the barriers placed in front of me, trying to navigate our for-profit healthcare system, my time was up. I had to look at my family and tell them, hey, I'm not pursuing this anymore. Luckily for me, my mother wasn't having that, and she kept making contact. She kept calling everybody that would listen. And we were able to get in touch with the West Virginia Catastrophic Illness Commission. And within a week of contacting that entity, my surgery was scheduled and my life was essentially saved. Now, at that point in time, they said, you need surgery, you'll recover. Once your recovery is up, you can go back to your life and get back to business as usual. We're around 4.5 weeks into the recovery process. Again, I found myself in excruciating pain. And that's when we learned that in the time I spent battling bureaucrats, when I should have been battling cancer, the cancer spread. And now I have an inoperable tumor in my back, and I'm going to have to deal with that for the rest of my life. Now, I'm lucky. I was able to get through a situation that, it was pretty grim. I was told, my family was told on 2 different occasions to call the family I wasn't going to wake up. And, I'm fortunate to be here today. But I should have been the most grateful, thankful person on earth when I finished my chemo treatments, and I wasn't. I was very upset because not only did I experience, an absolute nightmare dealing with our healthcare system, but I had to illegally use cannabis to get through chemotherapy. And, as a patient, someone who was struggling with just the everyday horrors that come along with aggressive chemotherapy treatments, feeling like a criminal on top of that for procuring a flower that made me feel better was not a good feeling. And I was super upset and also equally motivated. So I started going to the Capitol every day. If the lawmakers were there, I was there. And, I started telling my story basically to anybody who would listen. And, when I first started, they said, you might want to tone it down. It's not a good idea to, come up here and openly admit that you just used an illegal substance. But we didn't stop. We got organized. I did my best to build the grassroots movement that was responsible for the passage of the West Virginia Medical Cannabis Act, and I'm extremely proud of the work that we were able to do as citizens. None of us were paid. We didn't have big money lobby teams behind us. It was all done on gas money and shoe leather. And I saw firsthand exactly what can happen here in West Virginia when the people unite around a common cause and sing from the same songbook. And in the time that I've been advocating for patients at the legislature, I've had a front row seat to the show, and a lot of it, just to be frank, has been really hard to watch. I've heard debates on why it's okay to pay folks with developmental disabilities less than minimum wage. It was extremely painful to watch the Katherine Johnson Equal Pay Act die in both sides of the building on the day she passed away. Amendment 1, watching lawmakers strip away West Virginians' decisions when it comes to their own reproductive health care. It's been painful, and I have made friends with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. I've learned how to navigate the process, and I feel like if I'm fortunate enough to be one of the 4 candidates representing the 35th district, I'm in a unique position to be able to move legislation because of those relationships. So Natalie Tenant said it best a few months back at one of Ben Salango's bus tours. She said, we have a decision. We can move forward or move backwards. And when you're in your car, you put the car in R if you want to go backwards and D if you want to go forward. So, I'm asking everybody to put that car in D and let's move West Virginia forward. Let's work together and build the West Virginia that we all know we can have. So if you're interested in anything we're doing here with the campaign, you can find us at rustywilliamswv.com. Find us on all social media at Rusty Williams for WV. And my cell phone number. Actually, Fort Hill, you've probably already received my cell phone number. We've had a lot of volunteers doing door hangers. It's right there on the bottom, but if you haven't received one of those, my phone number is 304-356-9437, and I'm open to take any questions at any time. But again, thanks, Paul, for allowing this to go down, and thank you for everybody who's tuning in digitally and everybody who's there in person.
All right. Well, thank you, Rusty. And I believe up next is Mr. Doug Skaff.
Well, thank you, Dan, and thank you, Paul, for hosting this. This was a great idea, and this is what I love the best, is getting out and meeting people. And like Rusty said, I hate the fact that you can't go door to door and talk and learn about what's going on throughout our district. But hey, I just want to applaud everybody that's running. We have a good slate of candidates here in the 35th district, and the main reason I'm running again is because our current leadership, they just have our priorities all mixed up. It's ridiculous. We have to put West Virginians first. It seems like my last 2 years, I sat out of the legislature for 6 years and came back. The last 2 years was my first time back, and the priorities are all screwed up. And what I mean by that is everything that we focused on was how can we help line the pockets of corporations and out-of-state millionaires? What can we do to help them? And we were forgetting about us West Virginians. We gave a $60 million bailout to some coal company that was getting ready to file for bankruptcy within months after we gave it to them. We could have done a lot with that $60 million. We could have invested it in our people and our infrastructure and our broadband especially. So I just want to make West Virginia a place where we actually focus on West Virginians. That's the main focus I'm running again this year. The other thing I'm upset about over the last 5 years, someone might have already mentioned it, but we've lost over 57,000 people in 5 years under this administration, and they haven't done anything to focus on our brain drain and our recent college graduates who are continuing to get educated here and leave our state. We've got to make that a priority, or else our state's going to continue to lose population. We need to be creative. We need to be creative and work together. I'm gonna grab some water here. Got a little sinus issue going on. I think we need to work together to do what we can to reverse that trend. I want to be a destination state where people come to, not a departure state where people leave. We need to focus on small businesses. We need to look at the entrepreneurs. We always continue to go after and give out all these huge tax breaks to try to attract and dangle a carrot to get these big companies to come here. But what about those 2 and 3 person businesses that are really the backbone of West Virginia. That's what I focus on as a small business person. I think we have a lot of people who could start out of their garage. And if we had good broadband across our state, you could see many, many companies popping up and starting here. But we got to start somewhere. Like Rusty said, you know, we could have been the first state in the East when it comes to not only passing medical cannabis, but recreational. And now we have a potential to be the last state because our current administration continues to drag their feet. I applaud people like Rusty and some of the other legislators who were there when I wasn't to set up the infrastructure for cannabis. But the bottom line is they continue to do nothing to diversify our economy in a sector like cannabis. And I just don't understand why. We're just focusing on the wrong things. And lastly, when I say be creative, you know, when we give all these income or give all these tax breaks to all these corporations and send all that money out of state, why can't we focus on the people here and invest in what we need? For example, why don't we give no state income, give no income tax to recent college graduates for the first 5 years once they graduate college? That'd be an incentive for them to stay here. What about look at sectors of our market like nursing? We have a nursing shortage going on right now. And as we bounce out of COVID, we're going to need more and more nurses and health professionals. Why not pick industries where we need help and encourage students at a young age in high school to go to those programs, and your complete college loan will be forgiven if you stay in state and work in one of those fields where we have a need, whether, like Andrew Robinson said, whether it's welding or whether it's coding or whether it's nursing. This is what we need to do. We need to be creative and quit just copying what other states are doing and trying to dangle all these tax incentives to attract these home runs. I'd like to hit a few singles and work with the West Virginians that we have here. Sorry, I'm losing my voice, but I'm trying my hardest. And the last thing that I'm fighting for, and I love to stand up for, is I work when I can with the West Virginia Land Trust and Terrell Ellis. And I think, you know, I've lived in 3 different states and had a chance to move back here 12 years ago. I still tell people we have the most beautiful state in the union. And I think we need to do whatever we can to not only continue to beautify our state, but focus on tourism and tell the rest of the world and put that money in tourism so that people come here and they get to enjoy the treasures that we do as well as us. And focus a little bit of advertising to our own West Virginians so they can have fun and stay here and spend their money here rather than always going outside of the state. But my website, my Facebook page is DougSkaff.com. Excuse me. My cell phone is 304-549-2171. Once again, just wanted to reiterate, it's so important to get out and vote. We have a great group of people running this year. I applaud Cathy and Kayla and Rusty for getting there. We need help. Andrew Bird is not running again in the 35th district. And we need people like those who've signed up to be in the 35th that think the same way, work the same way, and are going to put West Virginians first. And I think I gave you my cell phone. It's 304-549-2171. Doug Skaff, 304-549-2171. Thanks again, Paul and Dan and everybody for participating.
I just picked this one. Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Cathy Ferguson. I'm running for the West Virginia House of Delegates in the 35th District. Thank you all for having me here today. Thank you, Mr. Epstein, for putting this together, and the Fort Hill community for having me. I don't get up this way very often, but whenever I do, it's just a beautiful treat. It's just a gorgeous day to be here, and I thank you all. About why I'm running. There's actually several reasons. I'm not a complete stranger to this. In 2016, I ran for a magistrate. And really the impetus for that was that I needed a job. I was really running for a job. I had left a 25-year career doing social services within a criminal justice-based setting all over the East Coast. And the most recent employment that I had was in Maryland. I was working as a crime victim specialist around issues of violence against women. So domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking. And I worked, again, with various agencies in law enforcement. But unfortunately, my father got diagnosed with cancer. And I made a choice to walk away from that career and come here and attend to him. Just wanted to give back to him what he gave to me. Unfortunately, he lost his battle with cancer, but I was stuck, trying to figure out what I was going to do next. Would I take my time and my talents and leave West Virginia, or would I try and make a go of it and we happened to be coming up on 2016. And I really thought that the magistrate position was really within my wheelhouse. Everything that I had done, from working with adjudicated youth, from working with vulnerable populations in mental health, geriatric units with dual diagnosis folks and people with dementia, those things I thought added to the fabric of what I could do here in West Virginia. So I just did decide to run. But one of the things that happened is that as I was in my journeys of campaigning, I was in Rand, and I knocked on the door of a woman who eventually got to the door. And the first thing she asked me was if I could go help her get her mail. She had not left the house in a week. I couldn't believe it. I went down, I got the mail, and I gave it to her. And we ended up having a conversation about the election season and what she thought was happening. But then she asked me a question. She asked me where I was from, and I told her I was from Dunbar. And the look on her face was, I can't even describe it. It was like a lament, because she then said to me, she's like, people live good in Dunbar, don't they? And it just hit me, because here was an aged white woman. She was clearly a baby boomer on the earlier end. And she was talking to me, what I like to think is a younger Black woman, younger, that's what I'm thinking about. I definitely a Black woman. But, you know, it just hit me in a way that I just didn't expect. But really what it did was underscore that people are hurting all around the state and all around this county. You know, there are a lot of things that are happening in terms of our just basic bread and butter issues: food, water, clothing, shelter, healthcare. All these things are priorities for folks. And these are things that I believe that we have to attend to. And we have to start putting people first. And that's the mantra of my campaign. So that was the first thing. The next thing was that I decided when I lost that I would just kind of galvanize my community around just trying to do improvement and really trying to be recognized and elevate our community in a way that we once had been back in the day. And this is an institute specifically. And it was during that time that an idea came from the county commissioner's office to develop the Shawnee Sports Complex. Beautiful in theory, beautiful in idea, beautiful in presentation. However, the one thing is that there was no community conversation, no real buy-in, no real engagement. And to me, that was just kind of an example of what has been happening again across the county and across the state. You know, communities that are underrepresented due to perhaps their racial identity, due to perhaps their religious solidarity, perhaps due to the fact that they're an unincorporated area, get short shrift. They're not always recognized, and they're not always invited to the table. And equally so, they're not always equipped with the resources to build their own table. So to me, that was a real big disconnect. You have a $10 million project in the heart of an African-American community. And to either side of it, we have crumbling homes. We're suffering with blight, with uninhabited households, and people are really just struggling. And I couldn't understand in my appeals to the county commission why there couldn't be microloans for families and people to develop small businesses that could support that sports complex. There are no restaurants really down there. There's plenty of opportunity for folks to be able to do things and to give back. And I really just never got a clear answer. I will say that we did get a basketball court, and there was a football field that was put in, and that was a great win. But I don't want us to, feel like that's a victory for us just to have those particular athletics. Because again, that was something that was important to me as well. We have a community of African American kids who primarily skew, for whatever reason, towards basketball and football. But there's no incentive, there's no coaching program to develop soccer, lacrosse, and baseball in that community. So these type of things just started weighing on me. And I started to think, like, how can we change this? Well, Cathy, what about, becoming a delegate? What about being a true representative of the people, recognizing that there are a lot of these issues happening across the board? I then started to look at the difference, with our area. Now, certainly, I've lived here. I've been away. I've come back. I've been away. I've come back because this is my home. I love it. I know some people will say, I'm never coming back. But I see the value and I understand the culture that we have here, and it's a beautiful one. If we harness it and we make it so that it's something that everybody can enjoy and appreciate, because we're giving them the things that they need. But I look at places like Pennsylvania, and I look at in Pittsburgh there, I look at Ohio, I look at North Carolina, I look at Maryland, I look at all these places that had, similar, in Kentucky, had similar types of downturns in their industries, and were able to make a go of it and progress their state forward. And I'm like, why can't we do that? Well, it's because we've been beholden to two industries. We've been beholden to chemicals and to coal. And that's just been what it is. It's been a decades-long kind of, generations-long strategies that the state has implemented. And it really has created, the haves and the have-nots, especially now that those industries are crumbling. So that was one. And then looking at the fact that those states and those areas have diversity. They have diversity in terms of their economics, but more importantly, they have diversity in terms of their demographics. Because when you bring people in that don't necessarily look like you, that don't necessarily worship like you, that don't necessarily have the same interests as you, you can grow an economy around those differences. And it adds to the cultural fabric of the state. And so I was like, you know what? We don't have that in West Virginia. We don't have any leadership that looks like me out of Kanawha County. As far as I know, we've only had one Black elected official in Kanawha County, and that was the late, great Nancy Starks, who was a magistrate back in the day. We've had people appointed to positions, but not anybody that's been elected. So I decided that I was going to throw my hat into the ring. And one of the reasons why diversity is critically important is that there was there was a report that just came out recently, I think last week, you can look it up on Google, by Citigroup. So they're all about the money. But they said that racism here in this country has cost America $16 trillion. But that's over the last 2 decades. So imagine that going back even further, right? So if it's happening to America as a whole, you can imagine what's happening here in West Virginia. So I really just feel very confident and very strongly about the need to have folks that look like multiple types of people. You can't have everybody that looks the same, that thinks the same, that went to the same school, that has the same insular type of vision for a state, because you're going to get the same results. We need people with unique backgrounds, unique experiences, who see the world through a different set of lenses to really progress the state. I consider myself to be a progressive candidate. I may not be the most progressive candidate. I know that I'm not a perfect candidate, but I do know that my causes are perfect. And with your help, I believe that we can turn this county around. I believe we can turn the state around, and we can make it one that wins and grows for everybody. So I thank you all for your time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, and that's about it. Going what?
Well, I'll ask a question.
Sure.
I'm a graduate of West Virginia State University, which is historically, it was State College when I graduated.
Yes.
A historically Black university.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And Land Grant College. So have you had, when I was there, a lot of, like the majority of the students were commuters like myself at the time, working other jobs and going in the evenings a lot of times. To what extent do you think is West Virginia State University, what thoughts do you have about how that can help grow Kanawha County, or what it can do for Kanawha County, or what Kanawha County could do for it?
Well, I will say,
the state.
Oh, okay. So the question had to do with West Virginia State University and how we can advance West Virginia State University here in the county, or just my thoughts about it and where it fits in the context of Kanawha County. So I would say this: number one, I love West Virginia State University. I didn't go to West Virginia State University because I grew up on that campus. And when I say grew up, I mean grew up. My father used to have me out there driving golf balls from the old gym all the way to the A building. So that was my stomping grounds. And also too, my grandfather was the first registrar there. He was the dean of sociology there, and he started the ROTC program there. And there's a building named after him. So that place is dear and dear to my heart. I think it's unfortunate that West Virginia State University has not gotten it to just do in terms of the reputation that it once had and the reputation that it now has. I think that people have diminished it because of its historical context. They have not elevated it to the place that it really deserves to be. I think that's number one. I think number two is that it has not received the full funding that it should be getting. They have not, the legislature has not been meeting its, giving the financial match that's due to the school so that it could grow and do some great things. So those are things I think that we need to, you know, understand. That said, to me, I look at West Virginia University, and that's known as the flagship of the state. But in my opinion, here closest to the capital city in Kanawha County, you have West Virginia State University. And if that's the flagship, West Virginia State University should be known as the cornerstone. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of things that have been built off the backs of that school. Some of the most educated people, we're talking about internationally known. You can't beat it. You can't beat it for what it can do for this state and for this county. So I'm all about elevating it to its proper due, and I will always shout out Go State.
Oh, we have time for another question. Once elected as a new delegate, 2 years, what is it you think what's the most impactful thing you think you can get done the time you have there initially, your first 2 years?
You know, it's really hard to say because so there was a question about in 2 years, what will have been the most impactful thing I would have done? And I really can't say necessarily. I certainly am a big advocate of the cannabis legislation, the normalization of marijuana act that Rusty has been working on with the West Virginia Can't Wait platform, of which I'm a member as well. And I think that's important. But for me, when people ask me, like, what's the first thing you're going to do or would you like to do? I would like to write a piece of legislation that says that anybody that runs for governor under one party and switches their party after they get in, that person has to pay back all the money that they got under the auspices of that previous party, and then pay $1 million penalty because it's outrageous. It's unconscionable. I don't appreciate it. So that's my first bill.
Much.
All right. Thank you all.
Because we had a cancellation, we find ourselves ending early, and that is a good thing probably. So I'll just let you know that we have recorded this, sure that it gets onto the group that I created for this event and to get interest for it here in the Fort Hill community, called the Fort Hill Blues. Being a musician, I thought that sounded kind of neat. Kind of sounded like also like that Hill Street Blues, but Fort Hill Blues being those in Fort Hill who vote blue, or at least identify with the Democratic Party. So thank you all for attending online. Thank you all for attending in person. Thanks Dan Taylor, who is Cathy Kunkel's campaign manager, for running the Zoom call. Thanks Tova Yampolsky, hope I got your name right, Tova, from the Sam Petsonk campaign for sponsoring and hosting the Zoom call. Thanks to Luke Tyree for bringing all the food. And Belinda Tyree, Sam's parents-in-law, for bringing the food and help and kind of co-sponsoring this whole event with us. Thanks to our neighbors who made their driveway available and invited people to come. Cathy single-handedly invited a whole bunch of people to join us on Facebook. I hope they managed to show up from all over the country. I saw somebody was from Louisiana. I thought that was pretty cool. So once again, I think we're going to end this now, and thank you for coming.